Okay, welcome into our Backyard Brothers podcast. We are talking baseball today. It's been a while since we've talked baseball. I think right after the World Series. So, uh, going on 5 months, I think, since we've talked baseball. But before we get there, we have to talk a little bit of basketball. And before we get there, we have a memory, which is back to baseball. So look at that cycle. Uh, my memory today, uh, baseball has been an interesting one for me because, uh, I covered it professionally. I've done a lot of things with baseball in my career, but it's never been the most fun sport for me to watch. However, that changes. In some cases and in some years, I really get into the sports. 2015 was one of those years that I really got into baseball, especially the postseason. For some reason, there was just something exciting about that season, especially the Kansas City Royals being in it. For some reason, I just found myself cheering for the Royals because they were underdogs for 170 years or whatever it's been, and so it was fun watching them. And then they got all the way to the World Series, and that's the World Series I want to talk about. It's 2015 World Series where they played the um, New York Mets, who I covered actually, and so it was two teams that I cared about playing in the World Series, and that really got my motor running for that World Series. And you can't get any better than the opening pitch, the very first pitch of the first game of the World Series is a solo home run from the Kansas City Royals. I mean, you knew it was going to be special at that point. And that first game went, I think, 14 innings before the Royals won, and then they also won Game Two. The Mets won Game Three. The Royals just absolutely stole Game Four because the Mets were up, I think, 3-1 in the ninth inning, and the Royals came back and won that game. And then Game Five went extra innings as well before the Royals pulled it out in New York. So I sent you guys highlights of that series. I don't know if you watched it live or if you have any thoughts about that series, but it was really exciting for me to watch. It was a very exciting World Series and a very exciting baseball postseason.
So interesting that Game 5. I was in Kansas City when that Game 5 was being played. Interesting enough, I'd been up there. I think we were going to like the Six Flags up there and spending a weekend, and so I was there in Kansas City when the Royals won that World Series. Of course, they were in New York when they won it, but I was like I turned on the TV for the last few minutes to watch it in the hotel room. It was kind of like, hey, cool, yeah, here I am in this city that like it feels electric. It's celebrating, and that was just kind of fun to be there, to be a part of that, and feel that electricity, even though the series was won 1,000 miles away.
So I think this is the third memory in a row we've talked about that I was on my mission for it. And so again, I was on my mission for this, so I did not watch it live.
I'll be right
Similar,
back. You keep talking.
but similar to you as well, Scott, baseball has never been a big sport for me. I enjoy going to games live. I enjoy being in person at a game, but I can't find enjoyment watching it on TV. I have fun playing it whenever I do, and whenever I have enough courage to actually stand at with the ball coming at me. Um, but with this, looking at the highlights, it's just always fun to watch some kind of championship, whatever it is, World Series, Super Bowl, NBA championship. It doesn't matter what it is. Whatever the championship game that you're watching is always really fun. And the way this game ended was a lot of fun. And KC was up 3-1, I think it was, and it was a really close game that last series until the end where they really, I think it was like 7 or 8-2 or something is how they ended up winning. So they really were really able to come back and just hit a home run. And so, but yeah, I mean, I didn't watch it live, but the highlights were fun to watch.
All right, great. I will have to jump off real quick again in just a couple of minutes, and then I'll be back for the whole time. But I wanted to get you guys started on talking about. Um, can you see my screen with the bracket?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to get you guys started, and I'll join the conversation in just a minute or so about some of these games. Obviously, the red is where we were wrong as a majority, and the blue is where we were right. And I put in the scores too, just for reference to see the crazy closeness of some games and the absolute blowouts of others, like a 91-52 UConn win and things like that. And so, 24, we got 24 right in the first round. Second round is 2 points each, and so we got 11 right in the second round, which is pretty good. 11 out of 16, not bad at all. So. Uh, go ahead and talk a little bit about some of these games that you saw that you want to call out in particular, and I will be right back.
You start, Dustin.
Yeah, so just kind of working our way from top left across, talking specifically about some of these upsets. Watching that Yale over Auburn game was fun. It's always fun to see that upset. As a casual BYU supporter, it was sad to see them struggle so much against Duquesne, and then have Duquesne struggle so much against Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And then watching Drake do so well was again something that was fun and good. Let's see, Grand Canyon is the one that we're watching now that I think are particularly excited about because they've been doing so well. Let's see, any thoughts on anything I've mentioned so far?
I think for me it'd be focus on Duquesne BYU. I was following the Yale Auburn game, but I didn't watch it live, unfortunately. But the Duquesne BYU, it was starting, and we were kind of talking offline about it too, and over text watching the game, and I could just kind of tell that Duquesne had a fire lit under them. They were just going for it, and they were just confusing BYU. But it's what word do I want to use here? It's amazing, I guess, that Duquesne goes up against Illinois and just gets absolutely clobbered at that point. It makes you wonder, like, well, did BYU just have a bad game? Probably, or was BYU ranked incorrectly? If you will, it just makes you kind of, at least makes me think these things. But it was very interesting. It was sad. I'm sure there's it's sad to have a team that just loses so badly in the first round. So I feel for all the BYU fans there.
Well, yeah, as one of them, let me say, as one of them that has watched many games this year. Yes, BYU had a bad game. They're one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the entire country, and they just didn't make a whole lot of threes that game. And you got to give credit to Duquesne's defense, who was really really good in that game to do it. And so it was 2 parts there: a really good Duquesne defense and just a poor offensive night from BYU for everyone except Jackson Robinson, who was really good. So,
yeah. So talking a few more, I'm looking more on the right side of the bracket now. Duke has shown extreme power, winning both their games by more than 20 points. I think NC State is the highest ranked team left in the tournament, and they've had
double-digit seed left.
Yeah, the last double-digit seed left. But also Gonzaga, I think, is the biggest flex. That they've won both of their games by 20 plus points, and one of them against Kansas, which we know was a little bit weak, but still, that's a huge thing.
If I could call out just a couple here, again down here, Clemson beating Baylor was impressive.
Mm-hmm.
I had Baylor in my Final Four in a lot of my brackets, and so Clemson flexing their muscles. They destroyed New Mexico, and then they really kept Baylor off their game for a lot of that game, and so that'll be a fun game. Arizona and Clemson. We'll talk about that in a second. Tennessee has been exactly who I thought they were, although Texas slowed them down offensively. And then Purdue just destroyed Utah State. I haven't seen. By far they almost won by 50 points, and that's insane. 1/8 there, and Utah State's a good team. They had their best season in school history, and Purdue Zach Edey is a really really good player. And the last one that I want to mention, way up here, the game. I don't know if you watched it. It was late at night over here, so you guys were even later. But Houston against Texas A&M was an insane game. I have never seen anything like that before, at least in, well, I shouldn't say before, but in a while, where Houston is up by 12 points with less than 2 minutes left in the game, and Texas comes back to tie the game and force overtime in under 2 minutes, and then Houston still pulled away and won. But that was just insane to watch that kind of comeback. And obviously, when you have that kind of thing, you have to do everything right, and Houston has to do everything wrong, and that's what happened. But yeah,
Yeah, I think with that game, when there's 10 minutes left and Houston was up by, it was like 15 or something. That's when it was late at night and I went to bed. Then saw alerts in the morning, close game, forces overtime. And I was like, whoa, how did that happen? And so went and rewatched the highlights of that, and it's like, wow, that was a crazy comeback that, just like you said, should never have happened. That Houston just played to it.
Yeah, I kind of kept eyes on that. I was staying up a little later that night, but I was actually watching more of the Oregon Creighton game which was also incredibly good. A double overtime. I think it was the only double overtime game this tournament so far. That one was a fantastic game. It was really close. I honestly hate Oregon usually, but I was rooting for Oregon in this instance, and so it was kind of sad that Creighton pulled it off. But it was a great game. Probably, in my opinion, the most exciting one I've seen so far.
that was also crazy because you look at that score and you say, "Wait a minute, that went into overtime." It's because Creighton dominated the second overtime.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oregon just completely ran out of gas for that second
Yeah.
overtime. They just were absolutely winded, and I think they only scored 2 points that second overtime.
Mhm. Okay, so let's jump into what we think here. We got a UConn versus San Diego State, which is fun because it's a rematch of the national championship game last year. UConn versus San Diego State. Obviously, UConn has won easily both of their games. San Diego State really had to pull off a tough one against UAB, but then they really destroyed Yale. And so, two really good defensive teams. Who are we taking? We have a majority here, so we're not going to have to go to the tiebreaker because we have three of us. But I'm gonna say that it'll be the same result as last year. UConn wins again.
Yeah, UConn.
I think UConn wins.
Okay. Whoops. That's gonna do this to me again, isn't it? See if I can do this quickly or not. Nope. Okay. I will add this in later. It's just not gonna cooperate right now, so we don't have time to mess with it. So I will add that in later. But we have to do the other one too. So I wonder if I can. Whatever. It's just not going to cooperate right now. So Illinois, Iowa State. Illinois has played two really, really good games. Iowa State kind of struggled against Washington State, but pulled it out in the end. So Illinois, Iowa State.
It's funny because I have two brackets, one with Illinois winning it all and one with Iowa State winning it all. So it's going to be interesting for me here. But for me, for this game, I'm going to call Illinois winning this game.
I'd say Illinois.
Okay, I would actually say Iowa State, but I'm not in the majority anymore. So I finally found a way to do this. So I had to go over here and take. Okay, so Illinois is now in the majority. Oh my goodness gracious. It's just not liking me today.
Wow, that's crazy.
Okay, and so we're going to pick the final four as well. UConn versus Illinois. That's a tough one. If it comes down to these two, I don't think anyone in this side of the bracket can stop UConn, to tell you the truth. That's me. But
yeah, I'm watching Illinois. I think that they've been on a tear, and I'm gonna call that Illinois upset.
Okay.
This is tough. I want Illinois to win, but I think it's going to be UConn.
Okay. All right, down here, North Carolina has played two very competitive or very easy games, really, to get to this point. Alabama had to sweat it out against Grand Canyon, but otherwise they scored 109 points in their first round, so they can score. But Grand Canyon slowed them down a little bit. But North Carolina, Alabama.
I don't think Alabama's caught their breath yet from that game against Grand Canyon. I think they're still winded 5 days later. So I'm going to say North Carolina because that was the most exciting game of the tournament. I know we talked about that, but that was after every play, players were just laying on the ground trying to breathe, and that was really fun. So
it was fun. I'm actually going the other way though. I'm going to pick an Alabama upset because of the way that the style that they play. When it works, you can beat anybody. Obviously, when it doesn't, you can lose to anybody. But I think it works in this case.
I think I'm going North Carolina here.
Okay. Hello, Bob. Oh, hello, Bob.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
We are just finishing up a prediction for March Madness before we get there. So we'll talk to you. We'll talk baseball here very shortly. But
Not a problem.
okay, Clemson, Arizona, guys. I really enjoyed the way Clemson played, but I think they're done. Arizona's going to win that game. Anyone disagree?
I'm calling the Clemson upset here, actually.
I'm going to follow that Clemson.
All right, I like it.
it.
Okay, that Final Four, North Carolina versus Clemson, ACC matchup.
That's North Carolina for me.
It would be for me too.
Okay, it doesn't really matter what I say, but I'm going to say Clemson for fun then.
Okay, other side of the bracket. Houston and Duke. That should be a fun one. Duke's played really well. Houston has too, but can they beat the Blue Blood? I think they can. I think it's Houston here. But
I second that. Houston.
Dustin, would you go a different way or not?
I think it might be an overtime one, but I'll say Houston.
Okay. NC State, the last double-digit seed left against Marquette. You know what? I'm taking the double-digit seed. I'm taking Cinderella to beat Marquette.
I'd say Marquette, unfortunately.
I think this is where their run ends. It's going to be Marquette.
Okay. All right. And then for the Final Four, Houston, Marquette, 1 and 2. I would obviously pick Houston here because I don't think Marquette's beating NC State. So I'm at Houston.
I say Houston. They have a player there who's just so fast. I forget his name, but he's so fast and so good at getting to the rim.
Shed.
Yeah, Shed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say that Marquette is actually able to pull this one out.
Okay. Purdue, Gonzaga. Purdue's been really impressive, but so has Gonzaga. This is a heavyweight fight. I really like Purdue so far, and I think Gonzaga's had a tough year relative to where they usually are. So I'm going Purdue.
Yeah, I'll second that. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. And most of my brackets, I have Purdue losing already. So Gonzaga.
Okay. All right, Creighton, Tennessee. Tennessee has been my champion in most of my brackets, and so I'm taking Tennessee to beat Creighton.
Yeah, Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Okay. Oops. Are you really going to do this now? Yeah, you are. Okay. I'll have to just fix you. Oh, really? Adobe is not my friend today. Okay. Tennessee is right here. So Purdue versus Tennessee. Like I said, I'm picking Tennessee to win it all. So I'm taking Tennessee over Purdue too.
Tennessee.
I'm going to take Tennessee as well.
Okay. I think that's the last that we'll do because next week we'll be able to talk about the Final Four. Okay. All right. So what we have as our majority is 1-1-1-2. So Yukon, North Carolina, Houston, Tennessee. Okay.
Yeah. This tournament has been more blue blood than normal. Maybe not the traditional blue bloods, but more of the lower seeded, higher seeded teams. Whatever, the lower number is better. Is in most cases this tournament.
Yeah. Okay. So that part is over with, and now we turn our attention over to opening day tomorrow. MLB. Is there a lot of feedback for me, or is it just me?
That's fine.
Okay. Great. Okay. So obviously we have 30 teams to talk about, and we have 35 minutes to do it. So the goal here is to do kind of a flash story. We're going to introduce each team very quickly and as quick as we can to go through each of these teams. Does that work for you, Bob?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So let's just start up. We did the same rotation last year. Start over in the American League with the American League East, and the Baltimore Orioles were the best team in the AL, and they lost their opening round division series to Texas. Are they still good enough to get where they're supposed to be?
I'm still picking Baltimore to take it all. They they added Corbin Burns this year, plus a few other pitchers. Jack, they added who was it? Craig Kimbrell in the bullpen. If he has anything left, we'll see about that. But they have such a good young core, and they have, depending on if he comes up early enough in the season, they have a potential rookie of the year with Jackson Holiday. So I'm sticking with Baltimore all the way.
I have as well, and I mentioned Corbin Burns in my notes as well. Cy Young Award winner. It's a big addition. Anything about Baltimore, Cody, Dustin?
I would second that. I would expect Baltimore to be pretty good.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
the other thing with them too is that they have they're going to start the year with some pitching on the injured list, but if they can get like John Means back and one or two other people going, they're going to be a handful. Baltimore all the way.
Yeah. Okay, Boston Red Sox. Bottom of the division last year. It may not change this year.
It was a very blah off season for them. When your big signings are people like Lucas Giolito and Tyler O'Neill, who never stays healthy. They had a lot of turnover in the front office. Chaim Bloom is gone now. They're on a new regime. But Boston's not there.
Yeah. Sorry, Dustin. No Boston this year.
Yeah.
Okay. New York Yankees. Obviously, the big news was signing Juan Soto from the Padres. Obviously, forms an offensive juggernaut with Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, but they haven't been to the World Series since 2009. Will that change?
They have the lineup to do it, and I cannot wait to see, Judge, Soto, Stanton. Right, left, right. That's going to be very hard for pitchers to work through and for managers to deal with. Big question there is going to be pitching. Garrett Cole starts the season on the injured list, and so your opening day starter is Nestor Cortez, who had health issues last year. If they can keep it together in the rotation, the Yankees will be in the playoffs this year. I can't wait to see Soto hit in Yankee Stadium. He is going to destroy that place.
Oh boy. Okay, Tampa Bay Rays. They finished with 99 wins last year, but lost in the wild card round to the eventual champion Texas Rangers. They're losing some talent. Tyler Glasnow gone. Wander Franco probably never playing baseball again.
That, yeah, technically right now I think he's still on the 40-man roster just because that's an administrative thing they have to do. But yeah, I will be very, very surprised if he comes back. Between that drama, losing Glasnow, the American League East got 3 teams into the playoffs last year. I think they're the ones who drop out.
That's fair. Yeah.
That's tough to go from a 100-win team to missing the playoffs.
It is, but
yeah.
I think the Yankees are going to be good enough. And I think we haven't gotten to Toronto yet, but I think they hold serve. Maybe they're the third team in, but yeah, it's a lot to ask of Tampa Bay to overcome all of that. I don't think this is their year.
Yeah. On to Toronto Blue Jays. They lost in the wild card round to the Twins last year. They were the third team to get into the playoffs from the American League. They had Justin Turner to the offense in the offseason. Suddenly, much more competitive division, maybe even than we thought. I mean, the Yankees probably taking the spot for the Rays, maybe in the playoffs if you put 3 teams in. But if you don't, can the Blue Jays make it?
Yeah, looking at the rest of the American League, I don't. It's going to be tough. I'm showing my hand early, I guess. If there is a third team from the East, I think it's going to be Toronto. But I think the American League East is going to lose a team to American League West. I'll save that for later. But if there's a third team in, it's Toronto. But otherwise, they're going to be in the fight for it. But not playoffs.
Okay, picking that division, does anyone not have Baltimore Orioles finishing first? Okay, so let's just do that. That's easy enough. Let's mix it up a little bit and go East. So let's go skip all the way to the National League East now, if we can.
Okay.
So starting with the Atlanta Braves, obviously best record in the major leagues last year. And then all of that, and they don't win a game in the division round, and they get swept out of it. No, they win one. They go 3-1 against Philadelphia. So obviously they're nemesis right now. They add Chris Sale to the pitching roster. They have probably 3 MVP caliber players on the one of which who won last year in Acuna. But they've won the division 6 straight years, I think now. But now can they win in the postseason is the question.
I think so. The lineup is still, crazy good. For me, it's the health of the pitching staff. I need to see Chris Sale get a whole season in. He hasn't done it in a while, and early signs are great. I think he's feeling good. I think he likes where he is. If they can, keep him and Max Fried, get one more good year out of Charlie Morton. But I think Atlanta is still the team to beat in the NL East.
Sorry, I realized my light was off. And I was sitting in the dark. Okay. Any thoughts on Atlanta, Dustin or Cody, beyond that? Okay. Miami Marlins. They surprised everyone by making the playoffs last year, but they lost in the wild card round to Philadelphia. They lose Sandy Alcantara. That's kind of a tough pill. But can they overcome all that, and can they get back to the postseason?
See, NL East also got 3 teams in the playoffs this year, and I think they're going to lose a team also. And unfortunately, I think it's Miami. There's still a pretty good young team. They're actually adding Tim Anderson. Be interesting to see, how he does in the National League. But, Alcantara is out for who knows how long right now. I think they're solid middle of the pack, but I don't see them in the playoffs again. Not this year.
That's what I was thinking too. Third in the division, but not
Mhm.
in.
Yep.
Oh. Mhm. Okay, New York Mets. They obviously blew up their entire team about a middle of the year last year. Realized they weren't competing, and they just blew everything up with dynamite. So it's now trying to find a way to still compete or rebuild, one or the other. Which one is it?
And it was surprising how many deals they got mentioned for and didn't land. The big thing for them was hanging on to Pete Alonso, at least for one more year. Kicking that can down the road. I can see them, maybe being a little bit better, but they're not going to make a run at anything this year.
Yep. Okay, Philadelphia Phillies. They finished second in the division. They still win 90 wins, but then they beat Miami in the wild card. They beat Atlanta in the divisional round, and then they go 7 games with Arizona in the championship series. They lose Reese Hoskins. That's a problem, but probably still easily the second best team in the division, right? So.
Well, and honestly, Hoskins was not a factor last year anyway. He blew out his knee, right at the beginning, and just was never able to get back on the field. Their 2 best moves over the offseason, I think, were, keeping Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. So that is still a very heavy-duty pitching staff. The lineup on the field is really good. Can't wait to see what Bryce Harper does with a full season at first base.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see what kind of a season Kyle Schwarber has this year. Is he going to do another 200 season with I forget what his OPS was, but he was off the charts. So,
yeah.
But yeah, Philadelphia is my other team from the East in the playoffs this year.
Yeah. Do they have a chance of surpassing Atlanta for number 1 in that division?
I say that comes down to pitching. If Sale stays healthy and Atlanta keeps their core rotation coming in every 5th day, then I think it's Atlanta's to win.
Okay.
I think they're my pick to win that division.
Okay.
Which one, Philly or Atlanta?
Philly.
Okay.
Washington Nationals. They were one of the worst teams in baseball last year, and nothing really changed in the offseason. So.
Yeah, thank goodness for Colorado and Oakland.
Yeah.
The names they added were they're kind of bargain basement names, with all due respect, but maybe Joey Gallo has a comeback season, but more than likely if he does, he'll be traded at the deadline to a contender who needs a good bat. There's still some pieces to build on, but Atlanta and Philly are going to keep everybody else, out of the picture.
Okay. Cody said he was picking Philadelphia to win the division. I've got Atlanta winning that one. Who else you guys got?
Philly.
Okay.
And you've got Atlanta, Bob?
I'm sticking with Atlanta. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Half and half.
Okay. AL Central, back to the American League. Sorry if I'm giving you whiplash.
That's okay.
Chicago White Sox. They won 61 games last year. That's not good for anyone who doesn't know. So they lost 101. So
yeah, they're a dumpster fire. They, Tim Anderson is gone. Liam Hendricks is gone. Dylan Cease is gone. They're swinging in the dark. They're still trying to figure it out.
Rough place to be. Okay.
Yeah.
Cleveland Guardians. Everyone thought that maybe they should win the AL Central last year, and then that didn't happen. They didn't even make the playoffs.
Picked them, yeah. So that tells you how much I know.
Yeah. Well,
I looked at their moves over the season, and there just wasn't anything either on the way in or on the way out that really pinked my radar. And I see Cleveland as a very, middle of the road. They're not going to win the division. AL Central is not going to get two teams in the playoffs. So, so Cleveland will not be a factor.
Okay. I agree. I mean, they've declined by 16 wins over the last 2 years, and doesn't seem like it's going up. So,
right.
Okay. Detroit Tigers. They added, and you got to help me on the pronunciation, but Kenta Maeda.
Kenta Maeda. Mm-hmm.
He was second in the Cy Young voting in 2020, missed entire 2022, and then had a really good year last year. Detroit is a fun one to keep your eye on, I think.
If anybody challenges Minnesota in the Central, I think it's going to be Detroit. They also added Jack Flaherty. They added Andrew Chafin. Spencer Torkelson, good young player coming up. They've got some, they've got some weapons, and nothing that they did was really for long term. There's a lot of 1 and 2 year contracts in there. So we'll see how it comes together. Chemistry is a funny thing, but if anybody in the Central is going to challenge, I think it's going to be Detroit.
Yeah, it's a fun one because, like you said, there's only one team from that division probably getting to the playoffs, so it's a tough one to try to for Detroit to try and get back there. But Kansas City Royals, they lost 106 games last year. They have a pretty good pitching rotation, but nothing else screams any excitement.
Yeah, it did well. Extending Bobby Witt Jr., I think, was about the most exciting thing that they did. I think they're going to grow and progress a little bit, and I think maybe they jump. They jump Chicago and get out of the cellar, but not a playoff contender.
Yep. And finally, the Minnesota Twins won the division last year, won the wild card round, swept the Blue Jays in that round, and then lost 3-1 to Houston in the division series, losing Sonny Gray, Jorge Polanco, but still probably plenty of depth here and talent to win that division pretty handily.
I'm still leaning in that direction. It's going to be interesting. They're moving Buxton to designated hitter, it seems like, which, if that keeps his bat in the lineup, he's been injury prone, almost since the get-go. But if that keeps his bat in the lineup, then, I think, Minnesota is the team to beat. And then, they have a couple of good players. Royce Lewis is I think, a really good young shortstop coming up.
Yep. So it sounds like Bob and I both have Minnesota winning that division. Do either of you have anything different? Dustin, Cody?
I just say the city of Detroit needs a team that can win playoffs. They had that in football this past year. They needed it in baseball, so I'm going to say Detroit.
I'm with Minnesota.
Yeah. Okay, whiplashing again over to the NL Central, starting with the Chicago Cubs. Their rebuild, or sorry, not rebuild, it seems like this is a very tight division race between about 4 teams. And so maybe the division that's going to be most exciting. So they re-signed Cody Bellinger. That's the big deal.
Yeah. Getting Bellinger back was big. and very interested. One of the major international players, Shota Imanaga, coming in, see what he can do in that pitching rotation with Kyle Hendricks and so forth. I think Chicago, they didn't do a lot. They're another team that was mentioned in a bunch of possible deals that, a lot of which didn't come through. But I think maybe the biggest difference with Chicago is actually not on the field. It's going to be in the dugout. Craig Counsell coming over from Milwaukee, I think, is going to bring a very different, mindset to the Cubs. He's done a great job in Milwaukee, and I'm very anxious to see what he does with Chicago. I think he pushes them in the first place.
Okay, awesome. Cincinnati Reds. This was the rebuild I was talking about. Everyone thought they were finishing maybe fourth, fifth, maybe, and then they finished third. Rebuild goes at a rapid pace. They finish above 500 when no one really saw that coming. They don't have a real star on this team, but plenty of talent everywhere. What's the read on this team?
I looked at their off-season moves, and this was another one where, I just didn't get a lot of needle movement one way or the other, to be honest with you. So it's going to be based on the players. I think that they're bringing in. Ellie De La Cruz, I think, is going to be one to watch. I see them kind of holding serve, but just like in the American League, National League Central is only going to get one team. And they could make a few people sweat, but I don't think they're going to win.
Okay. Dustin, Cody, stop me if I'm going too fast if you want to say anything about any of these teams, but I'm just moving on. Milwaukee Brewers. They won the division last year by about 9 games, but then losing the wild card to Arizona. They lose Corbin Burns and Josh Hader. They had probably the best pitching staff in the league last year, and so now that strength maybe goes into a weakness. Obviously, adding Rhys Hoskins may help, but in my opinion, the pitching staff was the anchor of the team, and now that anchor is going to take them to the bottom. So.
Yeah, and this is the other side of the coin that I was just talking about. You're losing Craig Counsell. And so, you have a brand new manager coming into a situation where, Milwaukee was not a dominant team last year. I mean, they won the division, but they weren't, necessarily a force to be reckoned with. So I think that, I see Milwaukee stepping back, maybe even a couple spots. They won't finish last, but they're not going to be winning it this year.
That was my thought too. I have them finishing third. So.
Yeah.
Okay, Pittsburgh Pirates. They haven't won 80 games since 2018, I think. So the rebuild seems to have been kind of neutral. So, and any movement that suggests making any kind of jump this year?
A few pieces, I guess. They bringing Andrew McCutchen back. Not sure he's ever going to retire. They got Martin Perez, who was a pretty solid pitcher in Texas. If O'Neal Cruz stays healthy, everybody was watching him up until he got hurt last year. So he could be a real force for them. Not too many, 6-7 shortstops in the league these days. So I don't see them any better than middle of the pack, but I think they are. I think they're on the way up. and if they can get one or two of those 80-win seasons in and turn themselves into a desired destination, but I think they're going to be, they're going to be competitive for sure.
Okay. St. Louis Cardinals. You don't see them very many times where the Cardinals finish last in their division, and that's what happened last year. But they added Sonny Gray, helps a defense that's already one of the better ones, and should be better than they were last year, maybe, but maybe not quite good enough to win the division for sure. But
yeah, the way they addressed the pitching rotation was interesting. They went and got a lot of veterans with some miles on them. Sonny Gray, I think, is probably the best of the lot, but they also got Lance Lynn, was it Kyle Crawford, I think. So they have a few people, that's another one where, if this older group can keep it together and give them, a solid season, they'll get out of the cellar. Nolan Arenado is too good to, I think have, back-to-back rough seasons, and, Paul Goldschmidt is still tough. They can put a pretty good lineup on the field, but the big question for me is that pitching. And I don't know that I see a bunch of, 30 and over starters carrying them, anywhere near the playoffs.
yeah. Okay. And you had said it earlier that you think Chicago's sliding into first place. I also picked Chicago in first. Dustin, Cody, this is a division that's not as easy to pick as some others. But
I think with my limited knowledge and not being anywhere near an expert, I'm going to choose Cincinnati to come on top of this one.
I think I'd have to go Chicago, follow the expert.
yeah.
Which
right.
expert?
Yeah, I'm looking around my shoulder too.
Yeah. It's not the one in the upper left-hand corner. I know
that. That's me on this screen. So
I guess it's me on mine. So
yeah. Okay. Over to the AL West, starting with the Houston Astros. They won the division, then they won the division series, and then they lost the championship series to Texas in 7 games. But Jose Altuve, Yordan Alvarez, Alex Bregman, Kyle Tucker, all 4 could be all-stars this year. So is Houston going anywhere?
Hader definitely helps, adding him in the bullpen. Extending Altuve, I think, helps the team. They did have Michael Brantley retire, so that's one bat gone out of the lineup. I think I think they're still going to be really good. After last season, I'm concerned about the durability of Justin Verlander. He's got a couple milestones that he's working on. By the end of the season, he and Max Scherzer could both pitch themselves into the top 10 all time in strikeouts. So he's got some personal goals ahead of him, and he is probably the last pitcher for a long, long while who has even, a ghost of a shot at 300 wins. Wow. But it in the days of the 5-man rotation and things like that, it's that sooner or later the 300 game winners are going to go the way of the dinosaur. But he had health issues last year. They still have good pitchers. They still have Framber Valdez and so forth. But it would really help their cause if Verlander stays healthy.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. Los Angeles Angels, one of the worst pitching staffs in baseball, and then they lose Shohei Ohtani, and so you're leaving Mike Trout and Anthony Rendon alone, and both are a year older, and both are a little less durable. So, yeah.
Trout actually was on my list of key players to watch because he had an injury shortened and subpar season for him last year, and I very curious to see how he bounces back from that. I used to be a huge Anthony Rendon fan, and some of the not just the fact that he can't stay on the field. I think his I'm not as big a fan of his
baseball anymore.
His perspective on the game. Yeah, so. And so that's definitely not a motivator for him to, fight through things and get out there and play. Yeah, I mean, right off the Angels now, the two, to me, the only other interesting thing to look for with the Angels, besides how Mike Trout comes back, this is the other managerial change I'm really interested in, because Ron Washington came over from Atlanta, and he has a great reputation as a teacher, for the clubs. He's been a successful manager before. He's taught a lot of people in Atlanta, really solid defensive fundamentals. And I'm curious to see what he will do with the Angels. I think outside of Craig Counsell, this may be the most interesting managerial change to me. So if he can, get inside the heads of some of the younger guys and start getting them grounded in fundamentals, who knows? Yeah. But they're not going anywhere this year.
Sure. As bad as the Angels might be, the Oakland Athletics probably worse. So they were the worst team in baseball last year, won 50 games, and they may have a chance to repeat that title again.
Yeah, they lost 112 last year. I looked 2 and 3 times, and I found nothing of interest as far as incoming or outgoing transactions. I just, it's a dumpster fire. It's not good. So I think there are 2 or 3 teams in the league that ought to be really happy that Oakland is still playing. And top it all off, all of the issues that they're going through, trying to figure out where they're going to play. Are they going to Las Vegas? Are they not going to Las Vegas? Are they signing a deal in Oakland? It's too much drama off the field too. And that's your last place team in the AL West.
Okay, Seattle Mariners. It's been a long, long time since the Mariners have made the playoffs. They have one of the best pitching staffs. They have an offense that's really soaring. This could be the year they end that drought. Is it?
I mentioned earlier that I thought AL East was going to lose one of their playoff slots from last year. I think Seattle is the one that picks it up. I think they're good enough. They didn't make a lot of dramatic changes, but sometimes that's a good thing. So, and they were in it right down to the wire last year. Julio Rodriguez is a superstar. A lot of good pieces around him. I think Seattle is very much in the mix.
All right. And lastly, the Texas Rangers. They go from the worst record in baseball to winning the World Series in 2 years or 3 years, I think. And so that's you don't see that happen very often. But they win the World Series. They surprised everybody. Corey Seager's back from injury. both Max Scherzer, Jacob deGrom are going to be sidelined for at least half the season, though. So it should be another neck and neck race with Houston for the division title, maybe, or are they a little further off because of the injuries they have?
Well, I think certainly Scherzer and deGrom are key. If they're going to repeat their success, they need to be back soon, and they need to stay healthy, and they need to contribute at previous levels. And I don't know if that's in either one of them. Texas loses Jordan Montgomery. They lose Martin Perez. So, without Scherzer and deGrom, pitching staff is gonna have a tough time. Nathan Eovaldi is still there, but he can't do it all by himself. I think, given the state of the league, I still kind of feel Texas in there because they have a really solid lineup that they can put on the field. Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, Aroldis Garcia. There's a lot of pop on that team. But if they're going to make another long run, they need the pitching.
Mm-hmm. I have Houston winning that division. At number 1, Texas, number 2, Seattle 3. Is that the order you have it too, Bob, or do you have a mixed up order?
No, that's what I have right now. And it's funny though. As I'm saying it out loud, I'm wondering if that last playoff spot comes down to Texas versus Tampa Bay.
Mm-hmm.
But given the lineup they can put on the field, I'm going to say Texas.
Okay.
But yeah, Houston. Houston, I think, has the stronger, more dependable pitching right now. So I'm going to keep Houston on top. Texas 2, Seattle 3.
Dustin, Cody, who do you have win that division?
The injuries would bother me, so I would go with Houston.
I want to say Seattle. I don't think that'll happen though. So I'm going to go Houston.
Okay. Last division, starting with the Arizona Diamondbacks, who surprised a lot of people as well by making it to the World Series. They beat Milwaukee in the wild card. They sweep the LA Dodgers in the division round. Then they beat Philadelphia in 7 games, and then they go to the World Series and lose in 5 to Texas. So they added Eduardo Rodriguez from the Tigers to add to their rotation. They also added Eugenio Suarez and Jock Peterson. Probably a long shot to win the NL West with the Dodgers there, but obviously if they make the playoffs, don't count them out at that point, based on last year.
Well, and the other really big thing that they did was just within the last few days was signing Jordan Montgomery. He was the last big free agent signing, I think, out there, the last of those Scott Boras 4. But they definitely did not stand pat. I really enjoyed watching this team last year. I think Corbin Carroll is going to be tremendous. And the Dodgers have some drama of their own. So, I think I still have to go, Dodgers until they prove me wrong, but Arizona's going to be right there. That's going to be a really good pitching staff, good, exciting lineup.
Okay.
I like them.
Yeah. All right. My hometown, Colorado Rockies, were the worst team in the National League last year. They seem unwilling to rebuild because they have an offense that can hit a lot of home runs, but their defense always gives up more of them. So unless they're willing to fully rebuild, they should still be one of the worst teams in baseball. So
This was another team where I looked and looked and looked, just not impressed with any of the offseason moves. My big story for Colorado is probably going to be, how does Chris Bryant play? They're they're going to be neck and neck with Oakland. Sorry.
Nope, it is what it is. I go to 1 or 2 games a year, and for some reason they end up winning the games I go to. So maybe I should just go to more.
There you
So,
get season tickets.
They'll start paying you to go.
So yeah. Okay, the Los Angeles Dodgers obviously won 100 games last year, but then got swept out of the divisional round by the Diamondbacks in their own division. They're one of the best teams in baseball. Mookie Betts, great collection of bats. They also add the best player in baseball, Shohei Ohtani, for the price of some country's gross national product. That, along with winning the sweepstakes for Yoshinobu Yamamoto, make the Dodgers probably the NL favorite, in my opinion. But
Yeah, Yamamoto had a rough spring. So there may be an adjustment period going on for him, but I figure he's probably going to settle down at some point. Getting Tyler Glasnow in that rotation is going to be important because a couple of the young arms that they have had over the last few years are injured again. Tony Gonsolin and Dustin May are out long term. But if the drama blows over and nothing sticks to Shohei Ohtani with the gambling stuff, that we talked about Judge Soto Stanton in New York. Betts Freeman Ohtani in LA would be that would be awesome. And Mookie is actually going to be a pretty fascinating story with the shift to shortstop too. You take a Gold Glove outfielder and you bring him back into the infield and put him in shortstop. But if he's able to make that work on a day in, day out basis, that's going to help their lineup. So.
Yeah. Okay, 2 more teams. San Diego Padres finished 82-80 last year. They were my pick to win the World Series last year, and obviously they didn't even make the playoffs. So what do I know? Adding Dylan Cease, though, big move for a good rotation. They've kind of begun to seem to slash some big expenses. So is it still a very talented team? Should they be in the mix for a wild card, or are we looking at a trading a lot of pieces during the season?
I honestly, after watching last year, they finished out of the playoffs with all of the big pieces that they have in there. With Bogarts, with Machado, with Tatis. They no longer have Juan Soto. They lost Blake Snell. And I don't. I mean, Cease is good. He's not Blake Snell good. So I don't think it's enough to get them back into the playoffs. I think they're going to be on the outside looking in again.
Okay. And the last team, the San Francisco Giants. Speaking of Blake Snell, adding Blake Snell to that rotation to try to get them competitive. He's just the NL Cy Young Award winner, right? So, and then they also traded for Matt Chapman to help the lineup. They finished 4th last year, but they could be a sneaky good contender this year.
So they've got. I think I actually like what they did this offseason. They added Matt Chapman. They added Blake Snell. They added Jorge Soler. And then, another player coming in from Korea this time, Jung-Hoon Lee, who could be a very important bat for them. So I like San Francisco. I think their pitching is strong enough. Logan Webb, Alex Cobb, add Blake Snell into that mix. And I think you've got a really good 1, 2, 3 combination there. I like San Francisco. I think they're making a move.
Okay. Does anyone not have LA winning that division? LA Dodgers?
Yeah, I one thumb up. I'm not giving him 2 just yet, but one thumb up.
What did you say, Cody?
I have Shohei Ohtani winning it all himself. So
Okay. Let's. Who's in the World Series? We don't have to go through the playoff predictions, but who's in the World Series? I'll go first here. So backing up to the ALCS, I have 1 and 2. I have Baltimore and Houston in the ALCS, but I have Houston's experience getting into the World Series. Right back there. From the NL, I have 1 and 2 again, LA and Atlanta, and I finally have LA getting over that hump, and I have the Dodgers winning the World Series, beating the Astros.
I like Atlanta. I'm hesitant on LA because they need some things to happen with the pitching. Granted, Atlanta does too. We were talking about Chris Sale's health earlier, but I think, the pitching makes me a little bit suspect, but, looking up and down, I'm not sure I see, Arizona is certainly capable of beating them. They've proven that. So I'm not sure who they beat, but I think Atlanta is in the World Series from the National. I think time is going to catch up with Houston eventually. I don't, unless Scherzer and DeGrom are back and at the top of their game, I'm not sure I see Texas repeating. Seattle, it'll be a step forward for them if they're in the playoffs. I don't think I see them going all the way. But I like Baltimore. I'll go Baltimore.
Okay, who do you have winning that one between Baltimore and Atlanta?
Baltimore takes 1 step forward. I don't think they take 2. I'll go Atlanta.
Okay, Dustin, Cody, who do you have in the World Series? Who do you have winning it?
I would have Baltimore and LA. I would say neither of them are the number ones in their conference, but both make it to the World Series. And I'm not a big fan of choosing the super teams to win it all, but I think that LA would do it.
Okay, Cody.
You're going to hear an echo. That's exactly what I was going to say. Actually, I was going to say Baltimore and LA winning it all.
Okay. Well, we'll check in again. We've put something on our schedule to check in around mid-season, which I guess is what is that? About June, All-Star game, June, July,
beginning of July. Yeah.
Yeah. So check in mid-season to see what's going on there. But so that's what we'll plan on. And happy opening day tomorrow.
I can't wait. Although technically opening day has happened.
Oh, has it? Okay.
In Seoul, Korea.
That's okay.
Those games counted, believe it or not. But
okay, they did, didn't they? All right.
So, but yeah, tomorrow will be great. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us, Bob, and we'll put this recording out sometime tomorrow. And we may have forgotten, we talked about the NCAA tournament as well earlier. So, but we have predictions for that too. So we'll next week we'll talk about Final Four. We'll review the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. We'll talk about the Final Four, and we'll find something else to talk about, I'm sure too. So
yeah. Is BYU still in it?
No, they got beat in the first round. Yeah.
No, I that much I knew.
Yes, that was not the funnest game to watch. Yeah. Okay, thanks everyone. Talk to you next week.
Take care, all.